The phone vibrated, a relentless buzzing against the wooden table. Christine sighed, a tired sound that felt older than her years. Another notification, another comment. She knew, without looking, what it would say. The digital landscape, once the platform for connection and shared experiences, had morphed into a gladiatorial arena, and she, along with the rest of her former family, was often at its center. She had dared to leave, dared to choose herself, to carve out a life free from the suffocating expectations of a plural marriage that had long ceased to serve her. And for that, she was both lauded as a hero and lambasted as a villain. But lately, a new, more insidious chorus had begun to rise from the digital cacophony. Comparisons. Comparisons to him. To Kody. Sister Wives fans are bashing Christine and comparing her to Kody Brown. The headline, glimpsed fleetingly on a friend's shared link, had been a punch to the gut. The irony was so bitter it made her teeth ache. Hadn't her entire struggle been about not being him? About reclaiming her voice, her agency, her very identity from the shadow of his patriarchal rule? She picked up the phone, her thumb hovering over the social media app. Curiosity, morbid and irresistible, always won. She scrolled, past the supportive messages, past the cheerful updates from her new, simpler life, straight into the comments section. There it was in stark, digital print. Christine is just as manipulative as Kody, only she hides it better. Looks like Christine learned a thing or two from Kody about cutting people off. Total hypocrite. She preaches kindness, but she's just as self-centered as he ever was, a female Kody. The words stung, sharp and unforgiving. A female Kody. The phrase twisted in her stomach, a physical nausea. It was a comparison she dreaded more than any other. To be seen as merely a mirror image of the man she had fought so hard to escape was a profound invalidation of her entire journey. She remembered the endless conversations, the tears, the desperate attempts to make Kody see, to make him care in the way she needed. His grand pronouncements, his insistence on being the head of the family, and his seemingly unwavering belief in his own righteousness. She had been the emotional one, the expressive one, often dismissed as dramatic or too sensitive. Her rebellion had been a slow burn, fueled by years of neglect, of feeling unloved and unheard. Now, to be accused of his very flaws, it felt like a cruel joke. She thought about the choices she had made since leaving, the move back to Utah, closer to her children and her spiritual community, the building of a new home, a space that truly felt hers, the joyful engagement, the blossoming of a love that felt balanced and reciprocal. Every step had been deliberate, a conscious effort to build a life founded on honesty, mutual respect, and genuine connection. Everything she had felt had been absent from her previous marriage. Yet the fans, observing through the distorted lens of heavily edited reality television and fleeting social media snippets, saw something different. They saw her joy, her newfound confidence, and interpreted it through a cynical filter. Her assertiveness was seen as arrogance, her clear boundaries as coldness, her happiness as a taunt to those left behind. "They don't understand," she whispered, her voice cracking. "They don't know the full story." But then, did anyone truly know the full story? Even she, living it, was still piecing together the fractured narrative of her past. The public narrative, however, was a beast of its own, fed by speculation, fueled by strong opinions, and solidified by echo chambers where one comparison bred another, reinforcing a warped reality. She remembered the early days of the show, the adoration, the fascination with their unconventional life. Kody, with his earnest pronouncements and grand plans, had been the charismatic leader. She, the fun, quirky wife, often providing comic relief or emotional insight. They had been a package, their individual identities subsumed by the Brown family brand. Her departure had shattered that illusion. And in the aftermath, as the pieces scattered, fans sought to assign blame, to find villains and heroes in a complex human drama. Kody, having lost 3 wives, was increasingly portrayed as the architect of his own downfall, a man whose rigidity and self-absorption had driven his family away. And now, Christine, having found happiness, was being accused of adopting his very traits in her pursuit of it. The comparison hurt most because it stripped away her agency. It implied that her growth, her choices, were not authentic expressions of her own spirit, but merely a learned behavior, a mimicry of the men she had rejected. It reduced her journey of self-discovery to a cynical power play, a strategic maneuver to win the divorce by mirroring her opponent. She scrolled further, her eyes scanning for any glimmer of understanding amidst the vitriol. Some fans defended her, highlighting her decades of quiet struggle, her resilience, her unwavering love for her children. But their voices seemed drowned out by the louder ones, more critical ones. She's just monetizing her divorce like he monetized plural marriage. Kody always thought he was right, and now Christine thinks she's always right too. Same energy. The words "same energy" stung the most. She had always prided herself on her empathy, her willingness to see multiple perspectives, even when they clashed with her own. Kody, in her experience, had often struggled with that. His perspective was frequently the only valid one in his eyes. Was I truly becoming that? A wave of self-doubt washed over her. Had I, in her pursuit of happiness, inadvertently hardened? Had the necessary boundaries she had erected transformed into walls? Had the emotional armor she had donned to survive the public scrutiny now become a part of her skin? She closed her eyes, picturing her children. Mykelti, Paydon, Aspen, Gwendolyn, Isabel, and Truly. They were her anchors, her reason. They knew her, truly knew her. They had seen her pain, her struggles, and now her joy. Their validation was the only one that truly mattered. Yet the public narrative, relentless and pervasive, still chipped away at her peace. She opened her eyes and looked around her new kitchen, bright, airy, filled with laughter and light, not tension and unspoken resentments. She remembered the feeling of lightness, of breathing freely the day she had finally driven away from the Flagstaff house for good. That lightness was real. Her joy was real. Her love for David was real. The comparisons, she realized, were not about her. They were about the fans' own need to make sense of a complex, messy human story. They sought patterns, even if those patterns were reductive and unfair. They craved simplistic narratives of good and evil, victim and perpetrator, and in doing so, they often flattened the rich and nuanced landscapes of human experience into caricatures. She remembered Kody, isolated in his own perceived victimhood, convinced of his righteousness, burdened by his own financial constraints. Did he feel the constant scrutiny as intensely as she did? Did he read the comments, the scathing analyses of his character, and feel the phantom pains of public judgment? Probably. Misery, after all, loved company, even if that company was the very person he was being compared to. A small, wry smile touched her lips. Perhaps in a strange, twisted way, the comparison was almost a compliment. It implied that she had power, that she had agency, that her actions carried weight, just as his had for so long. She had broken free, and in doing so, she had become a force to be reckoned with, both for better and for worse in the eyes of the public. She put the phone down. The buzzing had stopped. The comments were still there, unread, unspoken, but they no longer felt like a direct assault. They were merely echoes in a vast, impersonal chamber. Her truth was not found in their words, but in her own heart, in her quiet home, and in the loving eyes of her family.